I am pleased to welcome to the stage Alysha Dino, Senior Director of Publisher Development for Publica, in conversation with Christopher Martinez, OTT Director of Sales for Hearst Television.
Hello, Adweek. Yes. Yeah. So for essence of time, because it's a short fireside.
Of course.
No fire. We're going to do intros with the questions.
Cool. Works for me. We're
awesome.
Only following a small act, so not a big deal.
Alysha Dino. I work for Publica. We are a global CTV ad server. The first question is CTV ad breaks. What's your advice to maybe a very large platform that just announced they're releasing an AVOD version? How do they enrich the ad break?
Well, and thank you, Alysha. I'm Chris Martinez, OTT Director of Sales. For Hearst Television, I oversee a number of things in the OTT space for us. I think the place to start with CTV breaks and the way that we approach it is we're a broadcast television company at heart. We connect with almost 19% of the United States every day on a daily basis with our newscasts. So keeping the breaks short, to the point, keeping that user engagement up, making sure that everything we're doing, not only with the length of time for the breaks, but the content that's being put into it is incredibly relevant. It's diverse in what it is. You have good control over frequency. Those types of things will keep the users engaged to make sure that you're providing the best environment so that the content is what's leading the way and not the ad experience.
No, I love that. It's all about data, right? Yeah. And how much data can you pass as the content owner? And how do you curate it for CTV ad buyers specifically?
So there's basic things in this space that we're used to when it comes to programmatic stuff like, I lost my mic, there it is. Stuff like user agent, IP address. But as things are starting to change, we're moving into a world with real-time bidding or RTB 2.6 coming out. So being able to put in contextual signals, stuff beyond just the IAB category so that the buy side can see exactly what it is, the content type and all of the different key values that can be passed are something that we're surfacing to the buy side, because as a connected television and specifically programmatic industry, one of the biggest things that we compete against is transparency. So being as transparent as possible in your ad requests, passing everything that you can, not only about the viewer, but the content that they're watching in a completely privacy compliant way, allows for not only building the best break, but just making sure that we're creating value in the space in a transparent way.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you mapped the path for very local, how does a Hearst sort out server-side ad insertion? How do you get to that place of determining that that's how you move forward with the workflow?
Yeah, and it's a good question. So when we were in the evaluation process of figuring out who to work with and how to create the environment that was going to keep our users and our viewers and our local communities as engaged with possible with very local, not only from a news side, but from an entertainment and content side, being able to provide a clean and smooth user experience was what was really important to us. So early on, took us a little bit longer than I think I want to admit on stage here, but early on we struggled a little bit with filling breaks. Just from a programmatic aspect of it, we have a fast channel that's part of the app. So being able to insert server side with pod of requests and something that's completely stitched together allows for the best user experience in terms of ad rendering. It stops issues like latency. We're able to provide a clean and concise user experience that feels like you're watching linear television. Because again, as a linear broadcast television company, it is tremendously important to us to mirror that experience as much as possible. I'm having some mic issues, Alysha.
I'm sorry.
Don't know what I'm doing up here, everybody.
I think next up is frequency controls. I have to tell you, across all the conferences this year, whether you're streaming virtually or attending in person, it's the biggest issue, that and measurement, right?
Yeah, I mean, I swear I'm going to get the mic thing right, everybody here. Don't worry. It's on here somewhere. Don't worry about it. Oh, I'm going to get...
Yes, this is getting intense. Sure. Could be karaoke.
If I start walking towards the center of the stage to just start doing what seems like a tight five, just somebody, Higgins, just make sure you take me out. So the question was frequency, right?
Yeah, frequency control. How do you achieve it?
Technologically, it's complicated. So one of the biggest problems that we have, and I think any of the largest publishers in this room will tell you, controlling frequency is a complicated process because you have to have mapped IP addresses within a database that will allow you to create things like recency. And without getting super nerdy and into it, one of the ways that is the best to do it is to understand the creative that's coming through the pipes. Publica has a phrase that we use, a domain, which is basically just telling you the URL that's associated with the creative, but that isn't always enough. So using tools like machine learning and AI to actually scan the MP4 file for what it is being that's surfaced, whether it's the language, the content, anything that's associated with it, helps us map all of those things out. Relying on a system that has the amount of AI and machine learning required to tell you just how frequently or recently someone saw an ad is the best way to do this. So technologically, there are tools out there, Publica being some of them, that have really helped publishers like Hearst or Hearst Television get an understanding of how frequently our users have seen ads. Because when it comes for our point of view, frequency is not just about a user experience for our viewers, it's also about a brand safe environment for our advertising partners. So for us, we talk a lot about brand safety. It's about transparency, it's about quality content. Hearst Television is an older conservative company, and the content that we create is very thoughtful in what it is. We try to keep it family friendly when possible, but everything that we're doing is always under the guise of brand safety. So from the content side of things, that's easy, but managing frequency technologically helps us balance stuff like brand favorability. If you start pummeling somebody with frequency, think back to the holiday season across some of the streaming environment, you'd see the same ad over and over, and it actually affects your ability to think favorably of that brand. There's also the negative side of that, which is if you can't show the ads frequently enough, where a directly placed or even programmatically placed campaign, you're not creating an environment that supports ad recall. So brand safety for us is not just putting your ad in content that is safe, but it's also controlling that viewer experience so that we're able to produce the best results for our advertising partners. And I think as we develop this landscape more and more, frequency is such an issue that needs to be worked on. And I mean, look, I'm not smart enough to be the one to figure it out. I can talk about brand favorability all day, but I think my concern with it in general, though, is as we move into a more, I hate to say privacy compliant, but a more privacy enriched environment, stuff like frequency control is some of the things that consumers across the United States, as they opt out, don't realize that they're potentially losing. If you start obfuscating stuff like IP address, device ID, you remove the ability to create household graphs that help control these frequencies. And that's something I think that the average consumer wouldn't tell you. They would say that passing less data is going to be more beneficial for them. It's going to take away ad relevancy. It's going to increase frequency. It's going to make for not a great user experience. That's not what we're here to do.
It's true. Well, what would you say to the old broadcasters, though, where surfacing that data is such a limited for them because they don't want to? They don't want anybody out there buying, reselling, using that data in any inappropriate way.
It's a tightrope to walk, because as a publisher, the number one thing you can rely on is your first party data. It's one of the, outside of content, it's the content version of data, right? It's first party, it's yours. So having a strategy that plays it closer to the vest, I think, is a smart one, but understanding the value of passing certain key values and macros in a way that is privacy compliant. Like, there is a middle ground between what's happening right now and the future of, like, when we did a panel with some folks from Europe, we were talking about how different the user experience is for ads in markets like Europe when it comes to streaming. And the things that we talked about at the top about relevancy, diversity of ads, those things can be made better. I'm not saying we're doing it perfectly right now, but what I would say to our broadcasting partners in this space and any publisher that's worried about it, work with partners that allow you to be privacy compliant, have a strong privacy policy in your risk assessment. And in doing so, you can create an environment that works well for both sides, the buy side and your consumer. You're passing only data that they're accepting, and you're using to sell only data that has been approved by you. I think the last piece of all of it, and I feel like this is a long-winded answer to a short question.
No, it's a good one. I like it.
Is there needs to be an education of the average consumer. I think a lot of what you see on Twitter and Facebook and social media in general, especially the news of Elon Musk buying Twitter, a lot of what was talked about the last 2 days since that happened is removing ads from Twitter, and how people think that removing ads from an environment is what's going to protect your consumer privacy, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So I think having I don't know who would do this, who would operate this campaign, but having a public messaging come out about the things that happened with CCPA. And I think we just saw a resurfacing of VPPA, which for those of you that don't know what that is, it goes back to Blockbuster to tell you how relevant it is for current data mining. I think we could just need to do a better job of explaining the value to consumers of why working in a privacy compliant way is beneficial to them.
Yeah, I love that. Tell me, the unified auction, most well known as a header bidding engine, How is that contributing to building and constructing the right ad break for you guys at Hearst?
Yeah, so this goes back to diversity and relevancy of ads. Like if you don't have bid density, and for those of you not in the programmatic space, it just means if this were an auction house and Alysha and I were trying to sell you one of these Poland Spring water bottles, if I only had one of you bidding, the chances of me selling it for the highest rate are not great. So the more and more of you that are bidding and the frequency with which you're bidding helps us increase that bid density. So what bid density builds in a unified header bidding setup that we're utilizing with Publica and just header bidding in general is it allows not the publisher, it helps you maximize revenue, which is great, but it also helps create that environment that we were discussing just a moment ago about diversity of ads. So for us, being able to have technology that supports header bidding is, it's great for revenue. Look, most people here are in sales or in ad tech. So you got to make money, but doing it with the mission in mind of creating a good user environment is always the best thing for us.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because people always assume that you're plugging into open marketplace, right?
I think there's nothing more, I don't think there's anything in our business on the programmatic, especially CTV space, that gets an unfair bad name the open market.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is the difference between an open exchange and a point of exchange. So using partners that allow you to plug directly into SSPs where you can control all of the bids that are coming through. You're setting up PMPs with them. You're setting up different deals. Just allowing all of those auctions to be called technologically at the same time is what creates that header bidding environment and helps you. I feel like I've said the word environment like 75.
I like it though.
Anybody playing along at home, it's bingo. Said environment 53 times. It helps you just create an ecosystem or a marketplace or another word for environment that allows you to get the most bids in at once, calling all those auctions together and just putting as many ads as possible into your streams and doing so in a privacy compliant way.
I like it.
Yeah.
So Hearst, globally recognized brand. Tell us about the strategy of getting into streaming.
So I think for any legacy media company, which I think is a negative context word, but for any legacy media company, look, I mentioned at the top of this, we have television stations in that cover 39 states. It's 33 different television stations, reaching just about 19% of the United States every day via an over-the-air signal. And for us as a linear television company, that piece of our business will never go anywhere. What I think made sense as the next logical step of that business is we've always had a commitment to connecting with our viewers in our local markets. And as more viewers are streaming, they're still watching linear television and I think it's 3-to-1 in terms of viewership at this point still, and more so in ad spend. But finding them where they are, it's our responsibility as broadcasters to put our message and create local news and local type content for the viewers in our market. So if they're moving to a streaming environment, we need to meet them where they want to be. And that's always been our message. Our company started as a newspapers company. We were the first ones to put, along with Emmanuel Katz in 57 or something. Somebody Google it. We were the first ones to put ads in newspapers, and then it became radio and magazines and television, and now streaming TV is that next logical step for us. So in the next 18 months, I think we're starting to see a bit of a streaming, I hate to say fatigue, but a little bit of what we're seeing is overcreation of content. So doing so in a local and relevant way is the best way for legacy media companies like Hearst Television or any of our competitors or compatriots in the broadcasting space. It just makes the most sense for us from meeting our viewers where they want to watch our content space.
Can you talk a little bit about the FAST channels versus the app?
Yes. So look, we launched very local back in January of 2021. It was a soft launch and it's been a staged migration / rollout from the beginning. So being able to use fast channels as a means of mass distribution, because look, you always want to generate downloads, right? But if you can create a space where you can get your content out there, look, our app is free to begin with, but if you can get it into places where consumers are just kind of already there in a vMVPD environment, it allows you to get your message out there and it helps you generate downloads. Because ostensibly, we want to get everybody back to the app, right? But we love that our content can be consumed. It diversifies revenue streams. It diversifies download concepts for us. So supporting both those businesses in terms of the native app versus the fast channels, as you know, and it's kind of the genesis of this relationship, is that supporting a fast channel is a complicated process in that you need a smooth user experience for somebody to stay on the channel. And like your engagement level is really reliant on when it goes to break, is somebody going to stay there? So if you don't put together a well-formed break, it's going to be a mess and you're never going to generate the downloads that you need. So that fast environment across mass distribution channels versus the VOD and even fast environment within the native app are far different and both serve their purposes for us in terms of trying to just find more folks to watch our content.
So everybody's talking about the difference between linear and streaming. Mm-hmm. You have been at the forefront of both. Do you have a love and a hate moment for each?
All right, we're out of rehearsed questions now, so I might walk myself into something I'm uncomfortable saying.
It's off the record.
Everybody, just don't write this down. No, I have a love-hate with both sides of it. Okay, and this is going to be my diplomatic answer. I come from a linear TV background. Yeah. I started off selling linear ads across, from Paducah to Yakima, all the way up to Chicago and Dallas. And linear TV is an incredible reach vehicle. The frustration that I've always found with it, and what we at Hearst Television try to forward, is the reluctancy to change. I kind of compare it very often to baseball, where you've watched like the NBA and the NFL just so quickly surpass baseball. It took 20 years for baseball to become the number 3 sport in the country. And I've watched linear television over the last decade start to take that back seat a little bit. I think there's some updates that are being made to technology. If anyone's familiar with ATSC 3.0, which is the new way that signals are being transmitted from an over-the-air to a digital antenna, it's going to allow for IP-based targeting and increased addressability. It's been a long time coming. It's still going to be a long time to get there because of adoption across the broadcasting groups. So my love for it is its efficacy. My grandfather was in this business. He worked for Ogilvy in the 1960s. Oh, wow. And understanding that you can get your message in front of that many people at once has rung local cash registers. It's moved cars off lots. It's helped people find doctors and hospitals and lawyers when they're in need. And I understand that that's the most important part of linear television. The frustration there is that it's slow to change. And I have the exact opposite approach with connected television and OTT. I think our marketplace moves so fast sometimes that there's this fail fast approach that if anybody goes to grad school in the last 10 years, everybody talks about failing fast. If you just look what happened to some of my friends at CNN Plus, that was a fail fast mentality. They didn't get to where they wanted to and they let it go right away. And everyone's allowed to make their own business decisions. But I think in this space, we do not sit and let effect take long enough before we make drastic ecosystem changes. And I think that as it's an immature marketplace, but I think as the market matures over the next 5-6 years, one of the things that we're going to notice is people willing to try stuff for longer and let it fail, not just once, but twice or 3 times to see if we can really get it right rather than just abandoning entire concepts right when they come out the gate.
Well, it's interesting, your perspective. So talk about measurement from both lenses.
Oh boy. Measurement on the linear side of things. I probably could have mentioned this in my love-hate. It's really difficult, right? So I don't want to sit here and point fingers and say that we should have been doing it better longer ago. I think anyone that's here on the agency side or the buy side might be looking at me like, are you crazy? Measurement has never been perfect. So I don't know how to make it better. If I had an answer, I would have gone to work for one of the companies that was measuring it. But I don't know exactly how we make it better. I think the only thing that's been changing very quickly in the linear space is, anyone that's close to it, we went from diary markets only to LPM markets to RPD markets, RPD plus markets to BBO markets now. And I don't think any of those are the right answers. So as an ecosystem, both buy side and sell side, it's incumbent on us as creators of the content and the folks that are putting advertising messages in it to really get down to what is the value of an ad on a linear television set. And I understand that it comes down to measurement, but we all need to work together to get to that space, because buy side trying it, sell side, publisher side trying it is not worked. It hasn't worked for the last 30 years. So if we're going to see that business continue to thrive and continue to grow, it's really going to be heavily reliant on how we can create a better place for measurement. On the CTV and OTT side of things, we are kind of overflowing with different measurement concepts. And this is one of the things I was talking about in my hate section, which is somebody just try one and hold on to it for like 2 years and let me know. Because we've been trying to figure out the best way to create measurement. And are we talking about measurement in terms of impressions? There's a lot of I know that Mark from Mountain was just up here, and we could talk for days at a time about performance marketing and what that measurement means. So in the last breaths of this here, I think the measurement on the OTT and CTV side of things is complicated, but I think is solvable. On the linear side of our business, we're not going to get to a place that we need to without publishers and agency and advertiser community really putting our heads down, working together to create an environment that's going to work for all of us. And again, that's bingo for the word environment there. So yeah, I know it's complicated, Alysha, but
I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think we're queuing up the key takeaways.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's happening now. Yeah, it's very big.
Okay.
You went big.
Somebody else want to read this for us?
And then you're not going to go home. So building a good ad break. I actually think it's about the publisher controls, but I'm biased coming from Publica as a CTV ad server. But with the right ad serving tools, it's achievable, right?
I think so. I think it's the most important thing that we should be doing in the CTV space right now.
Yeah. And then the last one is more engaged viewers. I mean, we all know the user experience is everything. What I love is the different behaviors that we're surfacing now. So if you see the same advertiser in the same ad break, are they thinking it's the same ad? There's all sorts of things happening. So the controls down to the slot level are important, right?
Yeah, it does come down to the ability to be able to control exactly each ad, where it's being placed within the breaks, how those advertisers are actually being called to bid on your inventory, even when you're doing it in a direct sense, how you can manage to make sure that a Toyota ad doesn't air next to a Honda ad. Because believe it or not, if you talk to a layperson, the typical consumer is not used to seeing that. And because that's been so part of the rules for so long in linear TV. So as the publisher, having control of that, being able to manage it with the right technology is the best way to create that most relevant and safe ad break.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think time for questions. Anybody? It's been a quiet question crew, but if anybody's got something, and raise their hand and wait for the mic. I mean, I can keep going. Oh, we've got a virtual. Tiffany. Hello, Tiffany. What are the obstacles, if any, for local news programming when brand safety is prioritized, particularly when OTT buys are transacted programmatically?
Let me just digest that first.
Yeah,
So
Tiffany came at you hard.
Yeah,
Tiffany, way to go.
I didn't know there was going to be word problems here.
Yeah.
So for local news programming, when brand safety is prioritized, particularly when OTT buys are transacted programmatically. So I think it's about surfacing the relevant data about what that news is. Is it and this gets a little bit more complicated because now we're talking about using AI or machine learning to judge what type of news segment is currently on in a live environment. We have a lot of advertisers right now. They're like, I want news, but I don't want hard news. Can you put me in soft news? And I was like, have you ever been in a newsroom? Because those choices are made 15 minutes before that thing goes on the air. It's live news. So Tiffany, I think to answer your question is the obstacles are, as a advertiser, are you working with a news programmer that is putting out news that is unbiased, is fact-based, and is something that's helping the local community? Because that's the easiest way to get around that problem. We have a couple more questions coming in here.
It's coming in hot. Anybody in the audience? I thought about this when we were talking because we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
How important will contextual targeting be in CTV advertising, but also what can be done to encourage advertisers to invest in CTV? The interesting thing here is digital advertisers who have been limited in getting their dollars on TV can now do it with CTV.
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier, right? We're seeing brands on CTV that we've never seen before.
Look, it's basic media mix modeling. If you take consumer behavior and you put it in a pie chart, if 30% of their time spent with linear, 30% of your budget goes, or your impressions go to linear. If 20% spent with CTV, you put the 20% there. Just because it's a new and fancy technology doesn't mean we have to throw out old marketing principles. So for me, if I'm trying to encourage somebody to invest in CTV, I very quickly point at the amount of times that the average American spends with connected TV or online video per day, which is over an hour and 5 minutes, the average adult American. So that's how I would encourage them. How important will contextual advertising be?
Oh, from the audience,
yeah.
Yes.
If this works, yes. So why would you think that your budget should be cut up just by where consumer time is, if there's better efficiencies in different channels or better ways to get them connected and engaged?
Yeah, so the blanket statement of just following the pie chart, I think, is like marketing 101 from your question. And if you can create efficiency that turns into a cost per acquisition, you need to balance both sides of that equation, is meeting my viewers and my potential consumers where they are. Are they watching linear? Are they reading newspaper? Are they listening to digital audio? And balance that with, well, what's my cost per acquisition on the other side of that situation? It needs to be both of those things playing in concert together, because you're not going to put together a good buy if you just go, well, people are watching TV only, I'm just going to put my ads there, because we know over time that hasn't been successful.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I just wouldn't do a pie chart to pie chart.
You're probably right. Notice I don't do media planning, but there's a couple more questions. I think
you want to touch on the contextual targeting?
I don't know how we're doing on time.
I think
somebody get the hook and pull us off if we need to. How important will contextual targeting be in CTV advertising? I think super important. It's not just context and what type of content that it is, but what it's actually being shown. I was just talking about like a live news segment, having AI and machine learning technology that can tell you in real time what it is that you're serving into. Is there one of your if you're in McDonald's and there's a Burger King cup on screen right before the ad break, do you want to buy that slot? Right? Is that something that we can do in the future? There's companies that are doing that stuff, and that's the next stage for contextual. And then we have one last question, which is, what does Hearst look for in CTV ad tech partnerships?
This feels like it's from a vendor.
I can't speak for all of Hearst or all of Hearst Television, but what I can speak to is in finding partnerships. I think you just want to find partners that value your business in the same way that you do. I think it's always been important for us to connect with our local communities. Finding relevant technology that allows us to do that in the way that we have always chosen to is how we should, as any company would. Do their values align with yours? And if we can find that in an ad tech partner or a trafficking company, that's the way that we're going to do business. Like I said, I can't speak for everybody, but that's how I think any ethical business should always approach their ad tech partnerships or their partnerships in general.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Alysha. This has been so great.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Take care, everyone.